Being able to hit spin on your dinks is a terrific way to work the point at the kitchen line and go on offense, so that way you can create opportunities for yourself to get a high ball that you can eventually speed up or put away. There's 3 different types of spin that we can hit on our dinks, and today I'm going to show you all 3 of them, show you how to hit them, when to use them, and get you guys hitting all different kinds of dinks up here at the kitchen line. The 3 different types of spin are top spin, when the ball spins forward relative to your body after you hit it, backspin or slice, when the ball spins backwards after you hit it, or flat, which is when the ball has no spin at all. Each one of those spins is going to do a different thing for us. So today we're going to get into what those are and how to hit them, starting off with slice. So when you're hitting spin on your dinks, a slice is going to be the most common way to go. A lot of backhand and forehand dinks are going to be slice dinks. That's the kind of dink where you're starting from on top of the ball, you're swinging under, and then you're finishing up. So that swing path gets the ball to spin backwards off your contact point. What a slice dink does is it's going to stay lower. It's going to cross the net a little bit lower than a regular flat dink or a topspin dink. And off the bounce, it's going to stay low. So a slice dink is great if you want to penetrate deep in the kitchen and then get that ball to stay down low so that your opponent has to bend to get it. If you're playing someone that's a tall opponent, they're going to have a lot of trouble getting low underneath that slice dink. You can get that ball deeper because it's going to stay low, so there's not as much risk if you hit it a little bit far past the kitchen, because this shot right here isn't really attackable even if your opponent hits it out of the air. And that slice dink's going to stay down there to force your opponent to get it out of the air without being able to attack it. So to be able to hit this dink, we're going to make sure that we're starting on top of the ball with our wrist cocked back here. So when I'm slicing, I can't have my paddle like this with my wrist a straight extension of my forearm. I have to turn my wrist back. That's going to allow me to cup under the ball and then create that spin. I'm going to start from on top. I'm going to create a U shape with my paddle with my wrist still in that cocked back position. And then I'm going to finish up high right around the level of the net. So this is going to be my swing path. It's almost like a pendulum. I'm going to start high, come low, and then finish back up high, right in that nice, easy U shape. It's as if I'm trying to cradle the ball from my contact point right to my target. So if I'm going to hit a few slice dinks here back and forth, this is how it looks. Now notice how when I hit this dink, it's crossing the net low and it's staying low off the bounce. So again, this is a great dink if you want to keep your opponents low. So if you're playing someone that's tall, it forces them to bend down and it keeps the ball low over the net. So that way, even if they're reaching to hit it out of the air and try to attack it, they're probably not going to have success. Now, if we're hitting a forehand slice dink, it's essentially going to be the same thing, just on the other side of our body. We want the paddle to do essentially the same motion on either side. So when I'm hitting my forehand, I'm going to start off the same way with my paddle tip a little bit up, and I'm going to cradle it in that same high to low to high U-shaped motion. So it's going to look something like this. And then notice how I get that same effect of keeping that ball nice and low. Even though I'm getting it deep in the kitchen, it's low enough where my opponent is going to have trouble attacking it. So if you're putting spin on your dinks, like I said, slice is going to be the most common way to do it. A lot of players hit slice without even realizing that they're doing it. It's a lot easier to hit, it's a lot easier to control, and because the ball stays low, it's going to help you with a little more margin for error. The opposite of slice is topspin, which is a more aggressive way to dink, but it's going to have some limitations on how and when you can use it. So we're going to start off on the forehand side. It's a lot easier to generate on the forehand. And the one thing to note is that topspin we only want to hit on dead dinks or when we are set up in positions. That is, I'm not going to hit a topspin dink if I'm stretched off to the side. I'm not going to be a hero out here. I'm just going to hit a flat dink or maybe a slice dink if I'm stretched. But whenever I am in position, that's going to be my opportunity to hit topspin. To hit our dink, the first thing we're going to do is we want to make sure that we have a good contact point. For a topspin dink, we have to line up our bodies with the ball. So what I mean by that is I'm going to make sure that I'm hitting the ball right in front of my body. It's going to be really tough for me to control a topspin dink if I'm reaching out wide here. So we have to make sure that we're getting behind the ball. If I'm hitting my cross-court forehand, I'm actually going to angle my body slightly in that direction. That's going to allow me to put that force into the swing have good extension where I'm swinging out and getting my topspin by coming under and up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my paddle tip down right in front of my body. I'm going to keep my wrist bent back. That's important as a starting position. We're not going to use the wrist, but we are going to make sure that it's bent back. And as I swing low to high, I'm going to turn my forearm over the ball, so that brings me right back to my ready position. It's going to look like this. So a topspin dink is going to be hit a little bit higher over the net because topspin makes the ball go down and it pushes off towards your opponent off the bounce. That's actually going to cause it to bounce a little bit higher as well. So topspin dinks can have a lower margin for error in terms of getting attacked because I'm hitting it higher over the net. I have to give it that shape, that arc for the topspin to be able to pull it down. So if I hit it a little bit too hard, it might come into my opponent's strike zone. Again, that's why we want to make sure that we're hitting it when we're set up. But it's also super aggressive and I can hit with more pace. Because it has topspin on it, I can swing harder at it to hit the ball faster because the topspin is going to pull it down to the court and I can still get it to bounce in the kitchen even though I'm hitting it harder than, say, a slice dink. If I'm slicing the ball, I can't hit it as hard because the backspin carries it up and through the court versus the topspin that causes it to go down. Topspin dinks are super aggressive. If you move your opponents around the court with topspin dinks, you're almost guaranteed to get a pop-up. It's really tough to defend being pulled out side to side on topspin dinks. So if you're playing someone that has consistent dinks, but they're kind of dead dinks or they just sit there for you, topspin is an incredible way to take advantage of your opponent's poor dinking skills and be able to create those offensive opportunities. So that was how to hit topspin on your forehand. You can also hit it on the backhand side as well, but I would only recommend doing this personally if you have a two-handed backhand. It's really tough to hit a one-handed backhand topspin dink. There's some pros out there that do it. Ben Johns is a great one. But most players on the backhand side are hitting either flat or slice. It's way more consistent because this is an incredibly awkward motion. That's the motion we need to hit a one-handed backhand topspin dink. So instead today, I'm going to show you guys how to hit a two-handed backhand topspin dink. So if I want to hit a two-handed backhand, I have to have two hands on the paddle. My non-dominant hand is going to go on top. If you can fit both hands on the paddle without your fingers overlapping, then you can have your index finger down. But if they don't quite fit, then you can put your index finger up. This gives you a little more leverage on the paddle too and control with your left or your non-dominant side, which is important because the backhand dink on a two-hander is going to be almost entirely controlled by your left hand. All of the power and spin is coming from that left side. Your right arm's just there to guide it. So I'm going to set up with my knees bent. That contact point is going to be the same. So I'm not hitting that backhand out here. That's a really tough shot. If I'm going for that topspin two-hander, I have to hit it right in front of my body. I'm going to drop the paddle head, and then I'm going to swing over the top of it with that same exact swing we just talked about, except now my left hand's doing it with my right hand as a guide. Come under and up, right back into my ready position, and that's going to get us that spin, depth, and aggressive dink that we want. So it's going to look something like this. So again, notice how I'm able to get way more pace on my backhand there than I could with the slice dink. But again, we have to make sure that we're only doing this in position. If I'm hitting that shot from out here, I'm probably not going to make it. So you have to make sure that you're getting behind the ball, hitting out in front, and you're nice and comfortable for that topspin dink. Great way to punish your opponents if they're hitting dead dinks right to you. So the last type of spin that we're going to talk about is the one where there actually isn't any spin on the ball at all. That's called flat. That's when the ball isn't spinning forwards or backwards. It has zero spin. Flat dinks are going to be your most consistent way to dink. If you're an intermediate player or below, I wouldn't even recommend trying any of these spins. You just want to hit everything flat. But even if you're an advanced player, the flat dink has a ton of utility and we're going to be hitting it all the time. Flat dinks are incredible for defense. Like I said before, if you're stretched out, we're not really going to be putting any topspin on it. And if you're really stretched out, you're not going to want to put any slice either. And they're going to be able to be used for good placement. A flat dink is super easy to get to bounce right in the kitchen and move side to side. So if you're playing someone that's a little inconsistent, it's better to just hit a flat dink. Or if you just want to get the ball to bounce in the kitchen because you're playing someone that's crazy aggressive, attacking everything out of the air, the flat one's going to be the easiest one to reel in and get to bounce right there in the middle of that kitchen. So that way it's tough to attack. So if I want to hit the ball with no spin, I have to make sure that when I make contact, my paddle isn't moving up or down when it hits the ball. So I have to come under it, and I'm just gonna move it straight up for my backhand, or here, straight up for my forehand. So I'm not creating any friction this way or that way at contact. I'm just gonna come under and up straight from behind the ball. So that's gonna look a little bit something like this, where I'm just getting under it and extending forward. This is the most basic way to dink, and it's gonna be the most consistent way to dink with good control. So notice when I'm pushed out wide, I can just get that ball right in the middle of the kitchen. So if I have to move to it, this is gonna be the best bet for me to be able to play defense and stay consistent. And the flat dink is also amazing if you wanna get the ball down the line like that last one I did there. If you're pulled all the way out and you can't get that ball back cross court because it's gonna be low percentage and hard to get around it, go down the line with no spin, reset the point, the dink rally, and then we can go from there. But that flat dink, like you just saw, is gonna be that one that gets short in the kitchen and it's hard to attack. Now, before you go out and try all these different spins, it's gonna be really important to make sure you have a good strategy behind it. When I'm going for a top spin or slice dink, I'm almost always gonna only hit those shots cross court. And the reason for that is because when I'm creating spin, I have to swing the paddle harder. I have to create that friction between the ball and the paddle where I'm cutting down hard or swinging up on top of it. That means I have to swing faster, which means I have less margin for error because I'm using a more complex, more technical swing. So because I have less margin for error in my swing, I have to use the geometry of the court in order to create more margin for error for my shot. So corner to corner on that cross court, we have 24 feet in the kitchen. Kitchen line to kitchen line straight ahead is 14 feet. That extra 10 feet is huge. When I go cross court, even if I miss my target by a little bit, I'm able to keep the ball at least low, if not bouncing in the kitchen, versus a shot that would be halfway to the baseline if I missed it down the line. So it's really important that when we go aggressive, we're using those angles because we're hitting deeper shots, we're hitting spinnier shots, they're more aggressive by default. So let's use those angles instead of presenting an opportunity for our opponent to attack us back if we hit it a little bit too hard by accident.